Hi, I'm Madhav, and I'm a big hockey fan. A big fan of the Vancouver Canucks. I love writing articles about them in my free time. And yeah, that's basically it.
Yeah, beautiful. I know that hockey is super big in Canada, both hockey and ice hockey. So, everyone,
Yeah,
this
it's ice hockey. Yeah,
ice hockey.
exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
So everyone, this is Madhav Dalla. He's a senior at the University of British Columbia, so UBC in Western Canada. He's majoring in civil engineering, and today we'll be hearing more from Madhav about the choices he's made, the lessons he has learned along the way, as well as some valuable insights and advice and wisdom which he'll be sharing to all high schoolers listening to this podcast as you prepare for this upcoming and exciting next phase of your life that we call university. So, welcome to the podcast, University Unraveled. I'm your host, Arya Zarod. I currently study at Minerva University, so I'm an incoming sophomore. Welcome, Madhav, and thank you for joining us today. I know your schedule has been busy with work.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Beautiful. Would love to start with I brought up civil engineering. I know a lot of my friends like engineering in general. They're just math and sciencey people. They're not sure what field is it that is an interest to them. So I'm just curious how you narrow down from the wider field of engineering to civil engineering specifically.
Yeah, sure. So when I was growing up, my dad was a construction site superintendent, project manager on a variety of developments throughout the city I'm from. And oftentimes, I was too young, I guess, to go home alone after school. So he'd pick me up and we'd head over to his construction site where he worked. And I would just usually chill in the site office in the trailer or in the car and just see all the construction happening. And also at this time, I was always a pretty good student when it came to math and science and all that sort of stuff. But I never really applied myself per se until maybe like 10th grade. So I guess I got to a point where I wanted to narrow down on what I wanted to do in life, and I kind of liked the concept of engineering. And but I realized going into that would be lots of hard work. So I had to sort of put the boots on and start studying and start doing stuff outside of school. And yeah, I really fell in love with the concept of infrastructure. When I was in my first year of UBC engineering, it's a common program, common first year. So that means a cohort of 1,000 kids, for example, take the same courses, and at the end of that first year, they decide what to specialize in.
Mm.
And for me, it was between mechanical and civil. I really liked mechanical's thermodynamics program and everything that they had to do with that. But at the same time, I also loved civil engineering and infrastructure projects like bridges and roads and houses and like commercial development and stuff like that. So before going into my second year, they require you to fill out which one you want, your top choice, your top preference, and also they require you to, I guess, provide a statement in support of why you want to choose that program. So for me, it was 50-50 till the very end, and I chose civil engineering. I think another main reason for choosing that is the job market, especially in British Columbia, Vancouver, that area where I'm from. I would say the market for mechanical engineering is much less than the job market for civil engineering. I feel through my experience as well, it's easier for students in civil engineering to find a job compared to mechanical, especially in BC. Obviously, in some parts of the United States, there's a lot more mechanical jobs, but I guess it just depends on the region you're in. So I mean, it's a combination of a lot of things. Like, well, for infrastructure, my family being civil engineers, and then just loving the stuff I do in school. Yeah, that's basically it.
Yeah, I mean, I love that it runs in the blood. I know a lot of my business friends, their just main and only motivation is just that business runs in the blood. So I'm sure that's a factor. Um, I feel like as a host, I might be perfect today because I have almost net zero knowledge of civil engineering, and the whole field in general. So I might ask some super basic questions, but I'm sure it'll give a lot of clarity to listeners. So very basic question, but what's the difference between your degree versus an architecture degree on a macro high level?
Yeah, like a very, very high level. Architecture focuses on less structural aspects of, I guess, design. So, for example, in architecture, you're sort of going out and designing whatever the owner wants or whatever the client wants, and it's sort of up to the civil engineer to go ahead and make sure that the design is feasible in reality, make sure that all the structural components are checked rigorously through math and all those components. But it's a lot of different work. I would say civil engineering in general is a lot of collaboration between multiple different parties. There's many types of civil engineering. For example, the three main types is I can expand on it later, obviously too, but like the owner side, which is like the cities and the municipalities and the provinces, federal government, and there's also like consultants who are doing the design, doing the checks, and often the consultants are who hire the architects in the first place, and then you have the contractors who go ahead and take those drawings and will sort of put that into reality and build it. So I would say it's sort of taking work from an architecture or architect and putting it into the real world.
Mm. So it's very much a collaboration between you and the architect. So like you have complementing skill sets. Would you say that?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. And with your degree, you mentioned three different roles just now. With your degree, you can go and do any of these three roles after graduation. Like you'd have the.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, let's dive a little deeper. Is it possible for you to expand on each of the three roles and what exactly would be sort of roles and responsibilities of each of the three?
Yeah, sure. So let's start off with consultants. Actually, let's start off with the owner side, right? So say you're working at a city, and a city usually has certain projects they want to be delivered. Say there's a road that needs to be improved, or a water main that serves water to the community, or say a sewer, and these things need to be installed or maintained or upgraded. It's the job of the city's engineer to plan for that in advance. Basically, go through and see where they're lacking, where there needs to be improvement, and what needs to be done. And this can also be transportation engineer that works for the city is also a branch under civil engineering, and that would be identifying what, say, intersections are collision prone or what roads need bike lane or bike protections. So it's just a matter of identifying that, and then also civil engineers working on the owner side um, are involved in the process of delivering the project, meaning hiring consultants and hiring contractors and seeing the project from start to finish. So I would say that's sort of the job of the owner or the client per se. And then you have consultants. So consultants are hired by a client. This could be a city, a municipality, or it could also be a private developer, private company. And basically, the role of the consultant is to take whatever the idea the client has, and turn it into a feasible reality. So this is through, for example, they work with architects, like you said before, and then they go through the design process, and then they're working with different aspects of other consultants, like sub-consultants, such as environmental consultants or geotechnical consultants, to make sure that there's no harmful effects on the environment with the design, or there's no harmful effects to the ground, or the ground conditions are correct for the project to ensue. And then after that, I would say the third part of civil engineering is contracting, which is essentially taking their designs, being in communication with the owner, and actually going out and constructing whatever is designed. So it would be allocating resources, scheduling the project, hiring construction workers, construction foremen, superintendents to oversee that aspect of it, managing budgets, and obviously financial aspects are tied into all three. So I would say there's a big business, I guess, component to civil engineering. But yeah, everything is, I guess, grouped or like interconnected. Everyone works together, and yeah, that's one of the reasons I love it because everything needs so much collaboration from so many different groups of people to get anything done.
Yeah, I mean, everyone needs to like play their role and then the project comes to life. And as you said, you have complementing skill sets. So it's not like you can just have a civil engineers and the project comes to life. You need the finance team, you need the architects, you need the environmental team, etc. But no, that's a great 101. And so next time, if I'm ever talking to a civil engineering student, I probably also have an idea of what they're studying and what they're doing. Um, Aside from the rankings, I'm sure you looked into just the experience of doing civil engineering in these other Canadian schools. Would you say UBC is one of the best schools in Canada to do a civil engineering program?
I'll start off by saying one of my main focuses on choosing a program was the co-op program or like the internship program where you're able to extend your degree by a year in order to do or get practical work experience. So that was one of the major things on my checklist. And I found that um, most big universities that have engineering programs do allow that. So, for example, like UBC, Waterloo has a big emphasis on that, and then University of Toronto. Um, I found out that McGill doesn't, so that quickly, I guess, crossed off my list because they don't really prioritize that much. I mean, like the one of the reasons I love UBC, because obviously there's pros and cons to UBC as well. It has a great campus. Like it's probably one of the best campuses in the world. Um, it's beautiful. Like you go out there, it's nice in the fall, it's nice in the winter, it's nice in the summer, nice in the spring. There's so many cool buildings, so many trees, so much diversity walking around campus, and there's so many people from different backgrounds. There's a lot of things to be involved in, and it is, I guess, ranking wise, the best for me, or ranking wise, the best civil engineering program in Canada. If that's if ranking is something we would consider, but honestly, like I didn't even know about that until I went into the program and they sort of put it in your face. That oh we're number one in Canada, but yeah, it has a really good co-op program. Um, I would say there is a lot of support that they help you find jobs through a job board where you can apply and put in your resume to different positions that want to hire you. So I would think that's sort of what sets UBC apart for me.
Perfect. Perfect. But perhaps a slightly darker question and maybe harder for you to answer, but I want any listener who's thinking of UBC as a top school to just be aware of this. Because I believe that even a Harvard, even a Stanford, the best schools in the world have some or the other limitation or drawback, which only the current students can actually tell you about. So just personally, your experience so far, last couple of years, any significant drawbacks or limitations or just challenges you face studying at UBC?
Yeah, I would say a big challenge is the first year of university, especially in engineering. Like that first year, I still have nightmares about it to this day because it was just so brutal. The fact of the matter is, like I didn't have the best high school education because of COVID and or whatnot. And when you get thrown into that first year, they expect everybody to have that same standard, same knowledge base going into it. And I felt like there was a big discrepancy. There were some kids who were getting top grades, obviously, and there's some kids who were failing and had to drop out, right? So I was lucky enough to find myself sort of in the middle of that range. Um, but it's very tough. Like there's so much going on, so much content, so much exams that are thrown at you weekly, so many midterms, and the exam difficulty gets harder and harder and harder. So that's like obviously I knew it was going to be tough, but that first year was a really big shock, I guess, compared to how easy for me high school was.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, and like I would say for international students especially, UBC isn't the most forgiving school. For example, if you fail a course, you fail a course, and there's a lot of people who fail courses. And like the thing is, if you're a domestic student like me and you fail a course or end up in bad academic standing, um, it's not the end of the world because the fees aren't too high for domestic students. But if you're an international student and you aren't doing too well in your classes, the cost to retake that course is significant. And I feel like UBC makes a lot of money off of international students
Mm,
just solely based on how high the fees are. So I would say that's definitely a dark side. Just be aware of that and um, make sure that a financial commitment is something you want to go through because I know I have a lot of international friends at school and I see some of their tuition invoices and it like
uh-huh.
boggles my mind of how much money they're paying in comparison to me. It's sometimes like 5 times or 6 times what I'm paying, which is pretty insane to me. So yeah, I would say just keep an eye out. Another, I guess, drawback is the classes are huge,
Mm,
right? Like especially in first year, and even in big programs like civil engineering, some huge classes, and you may not get too much one-on-one time with the professor. A lot of the learning that you do comes from yourself or doing it in study groups. So make sure you have a good group of friends, group of support to help you out.
mm. No, I mean, good, valuable to hear. I think for the years of any international student, I think this broadly applies to the US as well. It's also just harder for us to get in statistically because of there's a certain quota of domestic students and the rest is international students. So there's a lot of students competing for a single spot. But I'm glad we touched upon this. You went through the, as you said, nightmarish first year experience of academic stress. I know this can be true for so many university students. Would just love to hear how did you eventually cope academically and any sort of strategies or best practices which you'd share for incoming freshmen into like, let's say, an intense academic program.
Yeah, I would say the number one thing is just, and it's hard for some people, but make sure you find a group of friends and a good support group that you like to be with, that you like to hang around with, but a group of friends that's also very motivated and is sort of like-minded. I think that's one of the things I like about university is you meet so many people who have the same goals and interests as you. Um, so I would say lean on other people and make sure they're good people. In first year, I felt like especially there's just so much competition. People are trying to get into their top choices of like engineering programs. You do meet people who are um, they're not looking out for your best interests. So try to, I guess, identify that and steer clear. Easier said than done.
Mm,
Um, Another piece of advice I would give for people in like an intense first year program or intense program in general is just make sure you have a calendar, make sure you have a schedule. Don't miss any assignments. Just know what you need to do and work as hard as you can to get it done because as long as you're not like negligent on what courses you have and what exams you have coming up and you're sort of gauging how much time you need to spend on each thing and you're I guess allocating time even in your mind um, and you're putting in the effort putting in the work I think anybody is going to be fine. I think where people get in trouble is when they take things for granted or get caught up in other stuff is when it really I guess kicks their ass sort of. So just make sure you're on top of that, and it should be okay. It'll all work out in the end.
Hmm. And I think self-study is a valuable skill to develop. Like you're not going to be in university all your life. You eventually will be in the working world and you'll have to still be learning and let's say taking courses and upgrading your skills, which is a lot more self-study. So I feel like university really does teach you how to self-study better versus high school where teachers are very much available, right? Like to clarify questions and give you that personal one-on-one attention. So there's much less need to actually do the self-study. Um,
Yeah, exactly.
glad we touched upon this. Would love to walk through writing a personal statement is something that is on everyone's mind. It's also difficult because there's no one formula, right? It's not like the SAT or the ACT where you can just do a ton of preparation and then just go and write an exam. So there's no right answer. But how did you personally approach writing the personal statement? And again, any best practices or tips you'd like to share?
Yeah, for sure. So I think UBC is very unique in how their personal profile is structured. I think um, I haven't looked at it in a while, but maybe like 6 or 7 questions they ask you or statements they ask you for, and it's like 250 words maximum, or maybe a little bit more for each of them. So it's like describe a time where you were this, right? And it's like basically an interview question, but you have a certain amount of words to describe it. Like for example, like how would your family and friends describe you? And then like blah blah blah. And you would have to sort of answer based on that. I would say like my biggest piece of advice for if you want to get into UBC is start early. For me, a lot of high schools here I find are geared towards getting kids into university, and UBC is obviously the main prime school that everyone is trying to get into. So it was a course I took, and it's like a common course. One of the assignments for that course is, oh, here are the UBC personal profile questions. Answer these as a part of an assignment, right? So I think like doing that in grade 11, a year before I actually had to apply, really got me thinking into how I would answer those questions. So, and I know this isn't feasible for a lot of people because they're trying to apply to so many different universities that they may not be able to look at this and start right away. But definitely, as soon as you get an opportunity, look at what you have to write, brainstorm, think of some ideas, just start early overall. Next thing is a lot of review steps. I found that like what I wrote initially and what my end product was were completely different. I think the first thing I did was draft up something. It's important that in the content you make a claim, like say, "Oh, I'm a very creative person," but the rest of your body, the rest of your paragraph should be space you use to back up that claim. Like, why are you creative? What makes you this? What makes you this trait? And you have to provide, I guess, concrete examples of maybe you can draw from work experience or volunteer experience or experience you did. And for UBC, I feel it doesn't have to be significant. Like, you don't have to have crazy, crazy volunteer experience, crazy internships at all. Like, it could be as simple as, oh, I was babysitting my cousin or anything like that, and like you can talk about what that game for you. Like for example, like my first part-time job when I was 14 was working at McDonald's, and so I talked about like how it allowed me or taught me how to work in a team, and I connected it all to, oh, I was helping members of my community or helping hungry members of my community. So something like that. But you can sort of like spin it good and like tie it all in. So like don't worry about your experiences if you don't have any like significant ones. You'll find a way to make it work. It's just a matter of a lot of review steps. So like when I started my first draft, I sent it over to my sister to do some review. And then I took that feedback, changed it up, made the edits, and I went to my friends, right? What feedback they'd have. So I went to like 2 friends, and then after that, I went to my school counselor. So he was very helpful and he went over all the edits he made and he was super nice about it. And then he suggested the final step before I go and actually submit it is to book an appointment with my English teacher, like my creative writing teacher, and go through all the grammar aspect of my application if there's anything that didn't make sense. And like me personally, I was very tunnel vision for UBC, so I didn't really focus much on other schools outside of the lower mainland. And I understand that a lot of people who are applying to many different schools wouldn't have that sort of advantage. But those are some of the paths I took. Um, so yeah, overall, just like start early, look at what you have to do, be resourceful, um, have lots of review, and in the content itself, provide concrete examples of how your work is matching a certain trait you claim to have. So that's basically it.
Yeah, sounds good. Sounds good. And I think I'm sure even in your case, the essay you start out with is very different from the essay you end up with. So get the
Yeah,
first
of
draft
course.
done. Review steps, review steps, review steps, feedback all comes into play, and you're continuously refining it. But you need something to start off with. Like I know a lot of people just get writer's block and just sit and stare at a blank Word document for hours. I would say start typing, and then we'll work from there.
Yeah,
Wow.
and like my time didn't have access to like ChatGPT and stuff, so you could like don't copy off ChatGPT obviously or like AI, but you could use it for inspiration if you're stuck. So
For sure. Um, would love to take a deep dive and talk a lot more about the very unique course structure you have at UBC, which I personally am a big fan of. I know a lot of American universities do not have this co-op structure. So, firstly, we'll start with the basic question: what is this co-op structure, the 5 year structure, and how does it work practically?
so basically it's a 5 year program. So typically you're taking a 4 year program and graduating, but you're still in this 5 year program taking 4 years worth of courses, but all the time you're not in school, you're using to do internships. So for me, for my program, first year common, everyone takes it, and then that summer I worked at a restaurant. So I worked in the kitchen of a restaurant. It was a fun time, not too much stress, but it did get kind of stressful sometimes. I got like a kitchen supervisor role, so that was sort of stressful, but it was fun time. And then I went to my second year, which would be second year semester one and second year semester two. So I finished that. And then after that, that left me in May of 2023. And so from there, I did an 8 month co op term. So an 8 month internship
Wow.
that led me to December 2023. And then I did, so how my third year works is you have 2 semesters, but you don't have to take them in an order. You can take them whichever order you'd like. So I took the January semester of my third year, so that's done. Now I am doing a 4 month co-op work term, um, and then I'll do the second semester per se of my third year. So technically, I'm still in third year, so I have to finish that, and then I'll do another 8 month co-op term from next or January 2025 to August 2025. So that's 20 months of work experience total. And then I'll do my fourth year, and that's going to be together. So I'll do first semester of fourth year in September 2025, and then second semester of fourth year in January 2026, and then I'll be graduating in April of 2026. So that's how sort of the program works, and it's good. Like you're what I felt going through a rotation already of working and then going to school is like a lot of things you do see in school make a lot more sense from just having that practical work experience.
Say more about the very last thing you said. That the practical work experience just makes school easier. How does it make school easier?
Well, I can give like an example of something. So, say you're writing a report, like a stupid lab report that you have like no idea why it's important or why you need to learn. To say it's like a soil mechanics report. When you're in the industry, um, you're either going to be, if you're in that geotechnical industry, you're either going to be writing that report um, based on research as a consultant, or you're going to be taking that research as a contractor and applying it to your work. Or like even from the owner side perspective, you're going to be looking at that, reviewing it, seeing if there's anything that ties to your bylaws or anything of that nature. So and then like another thing is like if you're doing a structural engineering job or even like a contracting job, you're seeing things get built in front of you in real time, right? And then when you're in school, you're doing a structural course, you can sort of see that thing and you can be like, hey, I can envision this in 3D and I can see how it gets constructed. And that sort of makes your whole life easier and sort of being able to grasp the concept and building an intuition for it that someone who didn't do that may not have, right? And also like another advantage is just like having that experience and going into industry is way easier after graduating.
For sure, for sure. I think I've seen a lot of friends who have graduated with 4 years of, they have tons of knowledge in their mind and tons of skills. But then first couple of months and even on their first job, they're a little bit clueless because I think some things will transfer and there's just some skills you can only learn on the job is a strong opinion that I have. And so for someone like you, I'm sure the transition to the working world will be easier because as you said, you've got about 20 months of work experience. So I'm sure it'll make
Yeah.
the transition from school to work easier. Um, would love to walk through some specific work experience you've had over the last couple of years at UBC. More than the specific job description, I'm interested in it if you can share one, the value of that experience, like what it taught you or what you learned. And two, I'd love for you to talk about how different experiences taught you like different aspects of this whole civil engineering industry. So go for it.
Yeah. So I would say I'll go through my experiences. So right now, I've completed one 8 month co-op term, and I'm currently at another 4 month co-op term with a different company. My first 8 month co-op term, I'll walk through the company and what I did. That's sort of a background, and then I can sort of delve into how I guess it helped me learn about the industry. My first co-op term was with a large general contractor in Canada called Acon Group, and this was a project. It was a Patalo Bridge replacement project. So it's like a massive project in British Columbia. It's about $1.4 billion government funded project that is basically building a bridge from two major cities in the Lower Mainland. It connects Surrey and New Westminster. So this project is massive and it has so many different scopes. There's obviously a structural component of like building a bridge, and then there's the component of other stuff like roads that lead into it. Um, and this is a joint venture, so basically it's a government project where they hire a group of companies, including a designer and then a contractor. So I was a part of the contractor team. Um, my role and responsibilities was I was like a student, but like a junior project coordinator, basically. So I was making sure the project was going smooth on the construction side and helping out the field engineers and the project engineers and the project managers. Um, so it was like helping out with the active construction, such as roads, retaining walls, underground sewage, underground drainage, which was like a big shock to me. Like I had no idea what project I was going to be on or what I was going to be helping with. I thought I was going to be helping build a bridge, but it was a lot of like stuff leading up to the bridge, which I think may have even been more useful to me in the end. So some of my responsibilities was helping with planning and scheduling for projects, meeting certain deadlines, making sure that construction was going smoothly, and milestones were being met. Another major thing, and I think this is the most valuable thing I picked up throughout my entire journey in this co-op, was the communication. I was talking to hundreds of people a day and so many stakeholders, and I would say going into this, I was pretty like a little bit shy and tentative of like talking to strangers and meeting new people, but this opportunity forced me to, I guess, naturally put myself out there and talk to so many different groups of people, whether that be construction foremen, construction laborers, other product managers, delivery companies, vendors, just overall talking to so many different people, being on the phone so much. It just became, I guess, second nature to me. And that's one of the things I'll like cherish so much about my experience, is how many people I talked to and how comfortable I became in those situations. That's definitely number one, the communication aspect. A lot of documentation, like you see how much of the projects are require documentation, a lot of quality control, making sure projects are up to certain quality standards, such as like concrete. Like you have to ensure that it meets a certain checks, and you're overseeing that entire process and making sure it's all good. Another major thing that they don't really focus on in school is the financials that every job comes with. It's such a heavy emphasis on financials in the industry. Obviously, in a private company, your goal is to try to make money, right? So a lot of things is like, oh, we can't spend this much time doing labor because we're obviously paying people to do a labor, right? So we're trying to get this done faster and we're trying to make money on jobs. So it's a lot of tracking that. It's a lot of dealing with large sums of money I've never seen before. Like for example, I remember one day I requested $2 million worth of stuff, which is like
Wow.
insane. Like it was like a purchase request of like $1.5 million in product wide fencing, and then another $500,000 in product wide barriers, which is like an insane amount of money. Like I've never seen that, like even close, remotely close to that amount of money. And I was spending like a lot of money per day just buying stuff,
Mm.
right, and getting it delivered. And it's funny how people try to compete with each other for your business. And I remember one time this guy gave me an axe, like a real axe, just for like buying stuff from him. But that's pretty funny. And I guess like, yeah, I mean those are some things I learned, just like how construction works and how you're applying engineering drawings to the real world, and how the financial aspect comes together, how the different, I guess, parties act, and how all the different stakeholders are involved. The co-op position I'm in right now is working at my local municipality, my local city. So I live in the city of Richmond. So working there for these next 4 months, and it's like a completely different world. Like you're not on site as often. I'm in the design and construction department, and so what my roles is acting or helping out with capital projects. So the city sets aside money to and has goals of projects they want to complete, and it's a matter of procuring these projects. So finding the appropriate consultants and finding the appropriate contractors to go out and sort of build these projects. And in the city, I guess there's a lot of political aspects that you have to be considerate of, and there's a lot of stages of checks that everything needs to go through. So I guess that's a little bit different, but honestly, for me, it's really cool to see how each industry is different, and how everything works together. And overall, like hopefully, like by the time I graduate, I'll have a big high level, big map understanding of how everything works, how everything's tied together, and sort of use that. And like my end goal in civil engineering isn't, I'm not too keen on the designing aspect of it, but I really do love the project management aspect of it. And a lot of that requires being able to understand how everything works. And like, I feel like I'm learning a significant amount right now. Like this is just some stuff that school doesn't teach you, you know?
Yeah. I'm sure a couple of things. You said communication. I think a lot of, especially from what you've described, a lot of your classroom experience is just sitting in a lecture hall and passively sort of consuming information and taking notes. So the communication is developed. I'm sure your network is growing beyond school, like with the working world, and you're actually sitting in meetings as an adult, as a professional versus just a student who's just there to learn, like you're contributing. Um, and you're understanding that civil engineering is not just about the engineering itself. There's a financial aspect, there's cost cutting involved, there's a political aspect. I'm sure like the local municipality government has their own considerations. So a lot of these things you're learning about other industries as well, essentially, beyond just civil engineering.
Yeah, exactly. So many different industries. 100%.
So no, I mean, lovely experience. And I'm sure that's a certain edge you'll have when you graduate versus someone who's gone to just university, studied for 4 years, and is entering the world of work for their first or their second experience. So I'm glad you're having this kind of experience. I'll quote you, in fact, because that quote which you told me when we first spoke stuck with me when you said that finding internships is a grueling and a stressful process. Agreed. I've experienced this, and friends have experienced this. Um, how do you go about finding and applying for these internships? And again, especially for someone who's having to do the search themselves, like they're not getting an internship through the university, like this is totally their lookout. How would you advise them to go about it?
Yeah, for like, I guess people going through the search themselves, it's definitely tougher. And like honestly, the jobs I've been working on, I found them myself. Like I didn't really use the job board. The job board is very helpful and it has so many jobs, but I can walk through how I found my first job. So um, I think every school has like job fairs and that kind of stuff. And in my second year, I was looking for an internship, and me and my friend attended a job fair at school. Um, and there's all these companies related to engineering, and we were walking around and we were like practicing networking. For example, I was like, oh, I'll go talk to this company, and then you'll go talk to that one. We are just taking turns, right? And we are just trying to learn how to make conversation with people that we have no idea what they're talking about and what industry they're a part of, and just trying to go with the flow and try to, I guess, make meaningful conversation. So it so ended up being that I went to a company booth, and this was Acon, and I talked about like, oh, I'm interested in construction and infrastructure, and realized they're a construction company from talking to them. So then I talked to them for about 5 to 10 minutes. It was this lady from HR. She was very nice, and eventually I remembered I saw a posting of a job they had for the Patala Bridge, and I'm like, I thought to myself that would be a pretty cool project. So I asked about it. I asked like, hey, so I saw this posting, and is there anything I can do to apply, and what do you recommend? And she told me directly. She gave me her business card, and I think she told me to basically email her, set up an interview. I think that gave me a big advantage because I did the interview. It went really well. I got the position, and randomly I decided to check on LinkedIn. I saw the position that I received. It had over 150 applicants. Just crazy stuff. And the thing is, like, I know for a fact that if I applied just straight on LinkedIn or straight on Indeed or any of those platforms, I would be one of those names on the list, right? Um, so it's super important that you put yourself out there and you reach out to people directly, even if it's just like going by them in the booth and talking to them, and then doing something directly rather than sending out your application in a group of people who are probably more qualified than you, right? Like at that point, I had no experience. I had no civil engineering experience. Like I had my restaurant kitchen experience, but nothing to do with the industry, right? I had school projects on my resume, but that's basically it. So I know for a fact that if I applied and I was competing with people who had real experience, based on those job applications, I would have never got that job. So it's very important that you put yourself out there and you engage in conversation. And like this could even be if you see someone who has a job you want, job you like, or you see a person working in an industry and they're hiring interns, for example, send them a message, send them an email. It's you're not gonna lose anything from just asking, inquiring about it. Don't be afraid to reach out. Don't be afraid of rejection because at the end of the day, like even if they don't reply to you or they ignore you, like what are you losing, right? So it's super important that you if you want something, you put your mind to it, you go get it, that's a very important mindset. I'd say for me, and like some tips I have is just like if you do get an opportunity to apply to places, make sure your resume is updated. It's in a clean format. Make sure there's no spelling mistakes or anything stupid like that on it. Um, Make custom cover letters for every company. I know that's something they look at. And they usually look at cover letters and resumes for all positions, and then just apply a lot. And what's funny is we, from being in the industry and seeing and talking to people, talking to employers and hire people who are hiring. At least in my industry, I had someone tell me we don't hire kids with straight A's, which is pretty nuts to me. Like if they're like, oh, if you're doing that well in school, like we don't want to hire you. They
Wow.
want people with experiences, right? They're like, we're looking for B and C students, which is like kind of nuts to me. But yeah, I mean, like grades aren't everything. It's way more important that you have experience going into applying for internships.
Yeah, I'm sure the time the A student might have spent in studying was maybe the time which the B or C student spent in work experience, and that paid off in the end. Um, but no, lovely advice and lovely to hear through the whole process on someone who's actually been in the industry and been there, done that. A lot of my friends, especially after freshman year, not a lot of students end up getting those top internships just because you don't have experience. A lot of my friends spend months applying on form, just going to website after website, and just uploading resumes and cover letters, getting a ton of rejections. All of them who are doing it, almost all of them who are currently doing internships, got the internship through someone in their network. Like they went to a networking event, physically spoke to someone, and then followed up afterwards, had a Zoom call, had an interview. That's where the internship came from. So at least that first experience, like network is the net worth, is what I'll say.
That's a good one. Yeah, and I mean, like if you have family or if you know anybody, you have friends, reach out to them. Like it's not a harm in asking, and like if they point you something, it could lead to a very good opportunity. You know.
Yeah, yeah. Were there any moments where, for whatever reason, you considered dropping out? And what would be, apart from just things being too difficult and you giving up and dropping out, would there be a very good, convincing reason for you to drop out, even from today?
Yeah, I mean, if I won the lottery, like if I won $100 million, I'm never working again. You know, I mean, no, that's unrealistic. But a very good reason. Like for me, I really value my education. I think it's a privilege that I'm going through this. Like obviously, like there's a lot of people in the world who don't get to experience this. So sometimes even when I'm pissed off about a bad grade that I got, or if I'm hating a class, like it's good to like ground myself and remember that like not everyone gets afforded certain opportunities, right? So I'm lucky in that sense. Um, Consider dropping out. Like if I come up with some genius idea like Facebook, like which is out of the realm of possibility. Like so, like once you know, I wouldn't drop out. Um, have I considered dropping out? Personally, not really. Like even though things were tough at certain points, I always knew that I could persevere through it, and I always had a pretty good support system around me to help out. But like for me, dropping out was never really part of the equation. But like honestly, if for anybody listening, it gets too tough or mentally taxing to the point where you're exhausted and you don't want to do it anymore, and it physically like hurts you to go through school and do it. Like it's fine to drop out. Like I mean, like always put your mental health over your school and classes. Just make sure you're all good mentally, and then make a decision on what you want to do. You know, it's just never worth pushing yourself so deep into a hole that you can't climb out of for some school or some grades, right? And that's a big stressor these days.
Yeah, no, just a few days ago, I had a very interesting conversation about dropping out and the pros and cons of dropping out with someone who's running a successful venture. Like he's making good money beyond going to UBC, and he's doing biomedical engineering. But we had a very interesting chat about why he didn't want to drop out and how he felt, even though he was running a successful venture, his academics were complementing the venture and his venture was growing more because he was part of this ecosystem. So maybe that's a good
Yeah,
topic out after. But yeah, I think very interesting. And very, I would love to. An intention of mine on the podcast is to get someone who's actually dropped out, who's currently working on something interesting, and talk through that whole process of dropping out. Because at least in our culture, it's a taboo. You want to have that degree, you want to be called educated. But I know that in the US, in tech, I know a lot of friends in San Francisco who are dropouts who are working at big tech companies, who are working in banks, right? So I think
yeah,
the changing. I will come back to something you said previously about networking, and how you and your friend went to different people and approached them and practiced those skills. But just for a high schooler who's coming into university, as a fresher, doesn't have too much networking experience, but probably has to do a lot more networking over the next couple of years. Any specific lessons you've learned along the way with regard to networking, which you'd like to share with listeners?
yeah. I mean, like any school that you're going to is going to provide you with opportunities to meet new people and meet people from the industry, right? It's just a matter of being resourceful. If there's certain newsletters, social media accounts, um, LinkedIn accounts that you have to follow to be able to know where the next opportunity to network is, do it. Like, just make sure you're on top of that thing. Make sure you have friends or like people who are looking for the same things that you are, and you're all motivating each other to follow through with that. And like for me, for my program, it's a lot of people who are trying to get internships, but at the same time, everyone wants to see each other succeed, right? It's a very good program in that sense. Everyone wants to see each other with jobs and have success and overall be happy for each other. So just find yourself people who feel that way and um, proceed with trying to find as much support, as much information that you possibly can to go out and actually do the networking, if that makes sense. Just stay on top of things and just reach out, even if there's not anything explicitly available. Um, if you know someone from a company, like I said before, just send them a message like, "Hey, I was looking to do this. I do this in school. Are you guys hiring?" That's it.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, with reaching out with cold outreach, I always give the example. If I want to reach out to, let's say, someone working at my dream company, I reach out. Worst case scenario is they don't reply, which is my current situation. I'm not getting any worse off. Best case scenario, they reply, you take it forward, you form a relationship, you get an internship. It could be a potential positive feedback loop. So, like, I love this concept of just risk versus reward, like asymmetric risk. You reach out to 100 people, none of them reply, nothing's changed. You're still the way you are. Even if one of them replies and you get an internship, that's still possibly changing the trajectory of your professional life. So never harmful.
Yeah, exactly. Great stuff.
You're almost you're going to be wrapping up soon, 2026. So a year before me. what is one intention you have for the next year or the next 2 years you have left at UBC?
Hang out on campus a lot more. Like
Mm,
I love going to class and just going home, right? Like that's so easy for me. And I go home and I watch TV and do all that stuff. But there's a lot of opportunities to do stuff on campus as well. So that's something I definitely want to pursue moving forward. Is just like seeking out fun things and events to go to.
mm,
Um, in terms of the rest of my like internship experience, I would say like I've done a term in a couple of terms in contracting. Um, Doing this one, learning the owner side aspect, and so I think maybe the third one, my final one, I might go into the consulting world, see what that's all about, and then based on that, when I graduate, have a like a well informed decision of which one I actually want to do when I go out into the real world, the real industry, on my own. So I think just keeping my mind open, trying new things, and even meeting new people. Like I feel like after you establish a group of friends, sometimes you stop, you lose that desire to meet new people and make new friends. So I think that's something else I want to do: is meet a lot of new people, more new people. Maybe that's through like a design team at school or like joining a club, which I haven't really pursued much of throughout my tenure. But yeah, there's a lot of options, a lot of things.
do you have any sort of clear idea in your mind regarding what you'd like to do after graduation?
Um, you see, like I'm at the point where I should know what I want to do, but I don't. Like I I know it's something in the industry, but I kind of want to explore all my avenues, and when I am graduating, apply to places I like, and then based on that, choosing the best job offer. Um, I think that would be pretty cool, being able to decide and have um, my own destiny in my own hands or whatever. That sounds so like corny, but um, yeah, I don't really know what I want to do after graduating. Maybe travel. That could also be an option. Like I felt like I haven't seen much of the world yet. Like obviously you guys go to a new place every semester, which is so sick. But um, I haven't really like, gotten that opportunity. So maybe um, go out maybe for a month or two before I start working, do all that, and then sort of hopefully that completes my desire for a little while there, and I can walk in on work. You know.
Yeah, I mean, good to give yourself the break, and maybe you can create your own mini Minerva experience of seven cities a couple of months. So
Yeah, exactly.
sounds good. So it's been a lovely conversation so far. I've personally learned a lot as a host. I'm sure the listeners have as well. We've talked about UBC, we've talked about civil engineering, we've talked about co-ops, we've talked about internships and networking, touched on a lot of different bases here. And a lot of what you're saying is from practical personal experience, right? Like you even have the credibility because you've spent months working. So you have that experience and you've specifically learned the value of that. Um, but we'll just wrap up with the fast fire round of questions. So very spontaneous, very exciting and fun. I'll just be asking you a couple of quick questions, sort of throwing them at you like bullets, and feel free to answer in just one short phrase or one sentence. So here we go. I mean, civil engineering student, but I need to know your favorite piece of architecture or construction in the world.
Um, probably everything Roman, like the Roman Colosseum. It's so old, but it's still standing. And like some of our buildings built like 50 years ago don't even, or 100 years ago don't even stand, right? So
Mm.
2,000 years ago, it's still so effective. It's sick.
Yeah, it is sick. Share with listeners any wise quote that has like stuck in your mind over a couple of years.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big hockey guy. I'm not a big quote guy. So maybe like you miss 100% of the shots you don't take by
Yeah,
Wayne Gretzky. That's
no,
a pretty good one.
love that quote. What does the quote mean to you?
Well, like in hockey sense, like if you're not shooting the puck, you're not scoring, right? And then in terms of the real world, like I iterated on a lot in the past. Like if you're not proactively, I guess, looking for jobs or like applying to places, like you're not going to get them, right? So you have to just shoot your shot, and it'll work eventually, right? Like, one of them will go in.
Yeah. Yeah, no, proactivity is a big one in university. I think in high school, a lot of things are handed to us, right? Like opportunities are handed to us. University is more of going out there and grabbing opportunities. No one is handing you anything. It's a lot of self-motivation. It's a lot of proactivity, clarity on direction. But I think that prepares us well for the real world, where again, no one is handing you an opportunity. You got to take the shot, in your words. Um, any one hobby or passion which you've developed over the last couple of years during your university days?
Yeah, I mean, like I'm a big, like I said before, like a big sports guy. Love watching sports in my free time. Love analyzing stuff. And like when I was younger, actually, one of the things I wanted to do was be like a sports journalist. So,
Hmm.
um, writing articles about sports, analyzing stuff about my favorite hockey team, for example, is something I really love to do in my free time, and just gives me um, something to do outside of school, outside of work. So, definitely that.
Yeah, nice, nice. Man, I'm looking forward to reading some of those articles. Um, what's your favorite way to unwind after a long and tiring day?
Favorite way to unwind. It could be probably sleep. Honestly, like I like going. I mean, like during the day, probably watching some TV. Um, and then maybe like going for a walk. That's always nice. And then sleep. That's top three things.
Yeah, very important. Obviously, lastly, if you had to wrap up this episode with one piece of advice or one message which you'd like to leave listeners with, to someone who's, let's say, younger than you, about to embark on this new world of university, what would your advice be?
Honestly, just have fun. Like you're only in high school for a certain amount of time, and the amount of freedom you have in high school is significant compared to what you may experience when you go into university or the real world. Like enjoy your summers. Like don't take it too seriously, especially when you're young. Um, have fun, see your friends, do fun stuff, go on bike rides. Once you're in university, like don't take school too seriously. Don't take your grades too seriously. Like honestly, at the end of the day, they don't. I guess for my school, they don't matter as long as you're passing. Make sure you pass. You don't want to repeat courses. And yeah, that's basically all I have.
Experience over the grades. Experience over the grades. Brilliant. Well, we will wrap up this episode. If a listener wants to connect or if they've got follow up questions, what's a good way to reach out to you?
Yeah, just reach out to me on Instagram, Madhav Dalla, just like my name. So yeah,
Lovely. We'll also put that in the description for listeners. Um, Thank you so much for your wise words on University Unraveled. And it was a pleasure. I really loved the conversation. Happy to have you on the podcast, Madhav.
hey, thanks so much for having me.
All right, that was the episode. To all the young listeners out there, I hope you enjoyed. I hope you learned something new, and I hope you feel more energized, inspired, and curious for the exciting university journey that lies ahead. Stay tuned. Many more wonderful episodes to be released on Uni Unveiled across a diversity of majors, countries, institutions, and speaker profiles. If you enjoyed this episode, please be sure to like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel Uni Unveiled. This podcast is just a small part of a much larger initiative undertaken by my family called Serene Strokes to spread positive sparks of growth, transformation, and joy among all our audience. Check out our official website www.serenestrokes.com. In the description and comments, please feel free to share other topics and questions which you would love to hear about from our different speakers on this podcast. Until then, take care and remember that this big word, university, may not be as scary or as intimidating as you think it is. Thank you for listening to Uni Unveiled.